Why should it be a matter we spend time on every day instead of focusing on the kids who are not in school right now because they have not been placed? The kids who are not in school now because their parents cannot afford the 9,000 shillings because this government cannot raise capitation.
Dr. Fred Matiang is so much concerned about how 4 years after elections, we are still talking about the payment of agents. This was a conversation that was brought back to life by the Secretary General of ODM in a funeral last week, when he also accused Junet Mohammed of being responsible for handling the money and logistics that were supposed to take care of the agents during the 2022 general elections, hence blaming them for them not clinching the presidential seat. Here are the concerns from Fred Matiang.
I'm going to ask the Secretary General to talk about the payment of agents and so on, because as you know, that is not something we ought to be discussing about in 2026 as we prepare for elections. You know, every time we are approaching a serious time of responsibility, such as we are doing, some of our leaders, especially those aligned to the administration, resort to drama and stories and lies to camouflage and to distract from answering straightforward questions and so on. We are preparing for elections as it is. And if anyone has got concerns about those agents who are not paid and so on, should they then address who hired them? And why should it be a national issue? Why should it be a concern for grace and so on about which agent or as an ordinary citizen or a senior citizen like Kembi Gitura? Why should it be a matter we spend time on every day instead of focusing on the kids who are not in school right now because they have not been placed? The kids who are not in school now because their parents cannot afford the 9,000 shillings because this government cannot raise capitation. The people who have been suffered as a result of insecurity in the country. The patients who have no food at Kenyatta National Hospital or who have no medicine and so on. Instead of focusing on those issues, you are engaged in trivialities and petty things about which agents were paid and not paid 4 years after the election. How serious are we?
Well, it is so obvious that our politics are always pegged on controversies, and this is not a new case. Everything with a bad or good end requires analysis and through what we call quote-unquote post-mortem in medical terms and post-analysis in political terms, all philosophical terms. Yes, nobody sat down to question what happened, where, when, who was responsible until date. And if persons are supposed to go to the next elections, they need to go to the new elections with distinct roles. In terms of managing finances, the parties need to know who is handling what, where, and when. They also need to do audit to make sure that the previous mistakes that they did are not recurring. Therefore, it is not a bad thing even 4 years after the elections to talk about it. The most unfortunate thing is that this conversation is coming at a time whereby there is this conversation to oster Edwin Sifuna as the ODM Secretary General, which again, through them weighing out, they have seen it will be a grand mistake that ODM would venture into. For the right cause, that they are going to lose the support of the Luhya nation, which we know do vote in numbers, unlike in Luo Nyanza, which approximately 700,000, with numbers even could be much more than that of 1 million people who don't vote because of voters' apathy. Why was voter apathy coming into play? Because you would see as the people, they wish to have a particular leader, but they, the ODM, through the late Raila Amolo Odinga, would select a leader for them, which they didn't like. So the portion of the persons who wanted not the MCA that you're electing for them, the senator that you're electing for them, the member of parliament, the governor, they will rather say, we are not going to vote. Why? You are giving them options that are not sitting well or resonating with them. Therefore, ostering Edwin Sifuna will give a big scar to ODM. Now, why am I talking about ODM from the issues of agents being paid or not paid? They were under a big umbrella of Azimio la Umoja, and they all had responsibilities that they had allocated each other to make sure that at the end of the day, they make sure they deliver victory. Now, victory is not gotten on the gutters. Victory is something that you have to fight for. Victory is something that you have to work hard for. Now, my question in this is, one, if the then President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta was supporting the late former Prime Minister Raila Amolo Odinga, and they did not secure or were not able to garner enough votes to ascend to presidency, what about now that he is a retired president and flagging Fred Matiang as the flag bearer of Jubilee Party? Now, Jubilee, alongside other parties, DCP, YPI, and DAP Kenya, are in the united opposition. How then is this opposition going to make sure that they garner power? Because a sitting president was unable to deliver victory to Raila Amolo Odinga. How then could this opposition, or, sometimes it is good to pretend to be naive or to reason in a layman's way. Is there a game plan between the government and Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta? Like, I tend to somewhat believe there was a game plan in 2022 between Uhuru Kenyatta and Ruto. Could there be a game plan between Uhuru? Because all these rhetorics that we are seeing in the political space, they could only mean one thing: making sure that the politicians' meal doesn't slip away from them. Because you tell me, among the opposition leaders, whom do you deem fit to hold that presidential office? Then go to the government and tell me, with all the atrocities that this regime has committed, direct from extrajudicial killings, state-sanctioned abductions, and, the education sector is crumbling. Our health systems are unfunctional. Let's talk about share. These are systems that have been engineered to fail for the benefit of those who are in power. So, how then do we claim as a people that we are going to get good leadership? The issue of disorganized majority and organized minority, I've always spoken about it. We need to be self-conscious and self-awareness with the kind of leaders we are going to put on the ballot. I don't know. What's your take on this? Give me your take in the comment section or below. If you love content of this nature and you're watching from our YouTube channel, kindly subscribe and press the notification button. So anytime that we are live or we upload content of this nature, you'll be the very first person to be notified. Ahmed Khalif is my name for the Unscripted Talks here in Dub Radio. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Kwa timba kali za Afrika, Dub Radio ndio mpango mzima.